Tiffany, and I was Anthony's youngest of 5 siblings. This past week and a half has been so challenging, emotionally, physically, spiritually, on me. But I felt the love and comfort of others as they have grieved the loss of Anthony as well. Two of the most common things that people have shared with me is that they remembered about Anthony is that he was kind and compassionate and always liked to be different, go against the grain and forge his own path in life. One of the earliest memories I have of Anthony is when I was a little girl and he had decided that he wanted a mohawk. He was told by our father that that would be okay only if our pastor agreed. So Anthony convinced me to ask the pastor for him. Already at a young age, he used his intelligence, wit, and charm to obtain outcomes in his favor. He must have thought that the little girl in pigtails would be more likely to get a yes from her pastor, and he was right. The next memory that stands out in my childhood was the day that I asked him to teach me how to ride a bike. Anthony was a skateboarder, risk-taker at heart, and liked a good laugh from as far back as I can remember. He simply put a helmet on me, took my training wheels off, told me to get on my bike, and pushed me down the hill beside our house. Luckily, there was a fence at the bottom of the hill to stop my momentum. I remember feeling like something was a little different, and quite frankly frightening about his approach. But I trusted him, had a lot of fun, and ultimately I did learn how to ride a bike that day. Another tender memory I have of him as a child is me falling asleep watching movies with him on the couch, and him carrying me upstairs to my bed each time, instead of just leaving me there to sleep on the couch. When my grandfather died, he was the one next to my grandmother the whole day, rubbing her back, wiping her tears, and giving her hugs. Toward the end of 2019, I was going through a really challenging time personally in my life. And I remember at one point breaking into tears in the kitchen, and Anthony immediately leapt to his feet and gave me the biggest hug. He told me that he loved me and that I was the best sister he could have ever asked for, and everything was going to be okay. He really loved seeing his friends and family happy. Everyone who knew him would say he was like a lone orchid, paving his own way in the world with a tough image, but deep down he had a really kind heart for others. Anthony was also very creative. He was the most artistic, right-brained person in our family. He was very naturally talented musically and with photography, artwork, and welding. His talent stood out in our family, and I always admired his natural artistic abilities and saw him experience so much joy when he was creating art or music. The word eulogy means to praise someone highly, and that's what I'm here to do today. But I feel I would miss the mark if I did not mention Anthony's struggle with addiction. And for the course of his life and in his days and seasons of healing and victories. In his early and most formative years, he was raised by an abusive, addicted father. And he lost our deeply cherished mother to cancer, who was his biggest fan and comforter when he was in his 20s. He did not have an easy life. Addiction to drugs and alcohol is a disease that gripped him as a teenager without regard to him physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, financially, or psychologically. I once asked him how the drugs and alcohol made him feel. And he responded that they made him feel like everything was okay in the moment, but ultimately always made things worse in his life. He had a string of 5 years in his 30s of victory over his addictions. And I couldn't have been more proud of him. I saw the Lord restore the years the locusts had eaten, and him to the person he was created to be. He had made amends to people he had hurt in his past, restored broken relationships, and made new healthy relationships. His body was restored physically. He was stable emotionally and financially. He finally had the energy and drive to work hard, save money, buy his first house with no mortgage, gutted and renovated his house from top to bottom with profit, and got straight A's in a rigorous mortuary science program. Got back into his love of art and music and books, and was not only excited about his future, he was there to help anyone in need. One of the biggest highlights of my wedding day was looking out at him standing up as a groomsman for my husband. and celebrating the fact that the pieces of his life that addiction had shattered had been put back together more than I ever imagined possible. When Anthony called me to tell me that he wanted to sell his house in Pittsburgh and move to Florida in late 2019, I was so excited. Not only would I get to have a closer relationship with him, he was also a great uncle who loved my children so deeply as well. Every time he'd walk through the door or we'd visit him at his house in Florida that he was renovating, they would run up to him with open arms yelling, "Uncle Nanny," and give him the biggest hugs and kisses. His whole face and spirit would light up when he saw them as well. He spoiled them with gifts, affection, hilarious dancing sessions in the kitchen, scooter rides, trips to the park, and ice cream. He bought my son his first fishing rod, and they became best friends over their mutual love for fishing. When I say fishing, I say it loosely because they had to have gone out fishing together almost 50 times, but never caught a single fish together. When I would have given up, it became an exciting tradition for them where they would go pack up their fishing rods and gear, and Anthony would stop at the store on the way and buy Matthew Oreos and lemonade. They would sit for hours with their rods in the water, ask fellow fishermen for advice on how to catch a fish, and come up with a plan for the next time to be a success, usually trying some sort of new bait. Neither of them seemed to care that they never caught a fish, and they never lost hope or gave up on the excitement of possibly catching a fish together one day. It was the sweetest bonding time for them, and watching their relationship grow closer and closer was something that I will never forget and miss dearly. My husband and Anthony spent hundreds of hours together renovating Anthony's first Florida house flip in Seminole Heights. And as first-time inexperienced house flippers, it ended up needing way more work than they ever anticipated or wanted. But just like fishing, even after hard days and months, they never gave up. Anthony was so proud of everything they had accomplished. They could see the end in sight when we could finally buy a steel house closer to the water. In May of 2020, Anthony was struggling with his addictions again and humbly checked himself into rehab. In tears, he said he just wanted his life to be back like it was for that 5-year stretch of sobriety in his 30s. We supported him and prayed over him, and we're thrilled that he was seeking help. The 4 months he spent living in recovery that followed rehab were amazing for him. Once again, we saw the Lord begin to restore the time the locusts had eaten. He looked and felt amazing physically. He was back to spending time in his hobbies and with our children. He was restoring his finances, working 40 hours a week on his house. And he said he was excited about finishing the project with Jared and out of the isolation addiction demands, making new healthy friendships. Sadly and unexpectedly, his addiction gripped him again, and there was nothing we could do but put up boundaries, give him over to his desires, and let him go and pray. I never stopped believing in Anthony, and his potential that he could and would truly find lifelong healing and victory over his disease. The day we found out that he had died, a piece of me died too. We had become so close over the years, and I was so confused at the timing of his death. He was so young and had so much opportunity ahead of him. Anthony and I had several respectful conversations about the Bible and Jesus over the years, what he believed and what I believed. He really enjoyed reading the Old Testament and asked me if he could join me at any Old Testament Bible studies I may attend. I always hoped that he would make it over to the New Testament where he would read about how deeply Jesus loved him unconditionally, so much that he died for him. Anthony always welcomed us, praying for him, and thanked us when we did. One day he mentioned Jesus wanting nothing to do with him, and I explained that I believed quite the opposite. Jesus was a homeless carpenter who spent all of his time with homeless friends, prostitutes, lepers, tax collectors, and the sick, blind, depressed, and lonely outcasts of society. And he wanted nothing more than to have a close relationship with Anthony. He always sent away the condemners. I believe that the enemy is the father of lies. He says I can be my own God and promises everything and delivers nothing except temporary pleasures that lead to heartache, destruction, and death. A close childhood friend of Anthony, who used to be his using buddy and has had victory over his addiction for years, sent me a text a few days ago. It said, "Being your own God is a heavy burden to bear. I love getting on my knees in the morning and humbly asking for guidance. It's the most punk rock thing I've ever done. A few weeks before Anthony died, he sent me a text saying that he was really grateful for our hospitality and generosity. But he wanted to be on his own again and move into his own house. He thanked us for being what he called his super DNA and unconditionally accepting relatives, and for believing in him more than he believed in himself. He also sent a text to a childhood friend referring to us as otherworldly people who were sent here to help and save mankind. We certainly do not have super DNA and make many mistakes and try our best to pour into him and his life. In reality, anything that Anthony saw in us that was good came straight from Jesus, because his words accurately describe Jesus, not our fallible selves. I don't know what Anthony's last days or hours were like, but my prayer is that he knew how much I loved him and believed in him unconditionally, and more importantly, how Jesus loved him and believed in him unconditionally. If I could tell Anthony one other thing today, it would be that there's no shame or guilt in another relapse, and taking another white chip, to surrendering again, to reaching out for help over and over again. Everyone is welcome. Deserves compassion, is broken and imperfect. I also think Anthony would have wanted to thank others who believed in and supported him over the years. Mark, he was so thankful for your help and support during his 5 years of victory. Without your help, his house and degree would not have been possible. Thank you for believing him and cheering for him on his graduation ceremony. Jeff, he was so thankful for your support over the years in Pittsburgh, as his only sibling living close to him. Your support with him buying and fixing his cars, inviting him to spend time with you and your family, and including him in fun things like the rafting trip meant so much to him. He told me once that he literally thought you were a real-life superhero growing up. Ted, he was so thankful for the years you two were close growing up and all the memories that were made in those years. You were his number one buddy. He was truly sorry for the things he did that were out of character when he was in active addiction but negatively impacted your life. He shared with me that he hoped one day to have the courage to make direct amends and hoped that you had already forgiven him. Marla, he thought the world of you and was so thankful to have you as his sister. He said over and over again how proud he was and how proud Mom would be and what you have accomplished in your life. He loved you and your genuine, honest friendship and spirit so much. Jared, he thought he was another brother. He always was amazed how calm, logical, and focused he could be under stress, and all the grit would problem solve and execute on the hundreds of hours which we spent together working on the house. He said it was his goal to channel his inner J-Rod when he was under stress in life. Thank you for loving him like a brother. He also had a devoted girlfriend named Tracy, who he was incredibly thankful for. She cared tenderly, faithfully, and unconditionally for him for almost a decade. She never stopped believing in him or his potential. He would not have had the victories he had in life without her as his relentless cheerleader or best friend. He was so deeply grateful for her. I also want to thank all of his recovery friends and sponsor. Matt and Mark, I know you were crucial to all of his victories over the past 7 months. Talk to him about surrender and working his program. He really respected and felt supported by both of you. I'm so deeply grateful for your love for him. I want to thank everyone who was here today for making this service to honor Anthony possible. Our family has felt your love and support and has helped to carry us through our grief. We love you. It helps me to know that Jesus wept when his close friend Lazarus died and that he understands my pain. Lord, when my heart is overwhelmed, please lead me to the rock that is higher than I. May your unfailing love be my comfort according to your promise.